and then occasionally smacked right dab flush up against the Constitution and saying, this is as far as I'm going and no further. The biggest knock on Judge Garland, and the biggest reason why he cannot be appointed under any circumstances, is the fact that he's real wishy-washy when it comes to the Second Amendment. So, Barack actually manages to kill a few birds with one stone here. He gets to further his gun control agenda because, let's face facts, the real legacy he wants is to disarm the American citizen. The real legacy that Barack Hussein Alu Akbar Obama, the unnatural-born citizen of this country, is to be the president who realized the dream of Cloward and Pivens. And he's made some serious inroads with that too, by the way. Never in history has any president had so many people unemployed and no longer looking for work. Yeah, I know, all you liberals out there, oh, but unemployment numbers are so low. What are you talking about, Tim? You're such a liar. And, well, again, remind you, I will, the reason the unemployment numbers are so low percentage-wise is because there's just so many people that aren't looking anymore. So they're not considered part of the workforce anymore. So they don't count in the numbers anymore. And guess what? Those people still need jobs. They just can't find them. Good work, Barack. Not that all of that falls under Barack Obama's fault, but he has managed to foster an environment and a culture in this country that penalizes success and penalizes hard work and effort and rewards the bureaucracy and the lazy. And those two are not the same, by the way. There's a lot of bureaucrats that work very hard. There's so much bureaucratical red tape to try and jump through. You have any idea how hard it is for them to even keep up with it themselves? That's a lot of work. So the bureaucrats, well, there might be a few of them that are lazy here and there, but most of them, they're hard-working folks. They're Americans just like you, and they're just trying to earn their government paycheck, which then, in turn, requires you to pay higher taxes because, you know, especially for you Bernie supporters out there who have trouble with this concept, let me say it real slow so that you'll understand, so you might get it. The government has zero money of its own. Even when it prints it. When you're using the fiat currency and you're just spending back printing the money, the government still has no cash of its own. Only what it forcibly takes in the form of taxes. Which means anytime you're getting something free, somebody's paid for it. And in lots of cases, if you're getting a service, a local service or a state service, then even you have probably helped to pay for this tax because it's come from your gasoline or through sales tax or through whatever other embedded taxes you may have in your county. If you've got a wheel tax in your county, there's another great example. You know, a lot of local taxes that you're not exempt from, even if you don't end up paying much in the way of federal taxes. But you get a federal service, a federal benefit. Well, if you're not helping to pay for that a little bit, somebody else is. Yeah, I get why Bernie doesn't understand it, and I get why most of the people are like 25 and younger that support Bernie, because these are typically people who have not been on the side of the equation where they're responsible for actually paying for something. They've always been on the benefit side. Mom and Dad's paying for this. I'm getting a grant for this. I'm getting this for this. Friends helping me. I've got a GoFundMe page paying for this. I'm found investors, or in my case, I'm looking for sponsors. But since I really don't have much in the way of sponsors, I'm still on the paying for it side of the equation. So come on, guys. If there's anybody out there wanting to sponsor the show, let me know. Small contributions are also accepted. All kidding aside, Barack does have an opportunity here. As the political stars align, if he doesn't get a hearing for Judge Garland, and he doesn't withdraw the nomination, then there is this really crazy out there chance that at the end of the election, if for some strange reason Hillary or Bernie end up getting a trip to the White House, given that this guy is still a fairly centrist type appeals court judge, there's a good chance the Republicans might say, hey, you know what, maybe we better go ahead and confirm this guy, because he's probably going to be a heck of a lot better than what a President Clinton or a President Sanders will put in front of us, and we're not going to be able to stall for the entirety of another 4 to 8 to who knows how many years without eventually putting someone in the spot that Antonin Scalia held. Ultimately, there's too many bad things that can happen without having a full complement of justices on the Supreme Court. We keep just 8, and we keep having 8 and 8 ties, then a lot of this stuff just goes back to the finding of the last court, and that's the way it's held. Now, in some cases, that could be a good thing. In a lot of cases, it's probably going to be a bad thing, because unfortunately, given the way things have went in this current administration, most of the people who've had to push legislation to the Supreme Court have done so out of a necessity to fight for liberty, or to fight for their constitutional rights. So, if Barack manages to leave that in play, then he gets a not so strong on the Second Amendment, potential Second Amendment nullifying vote as the tie-breaking vote on the Supreme Court, and that will be his legacy. One more step towards the ultimate goal of disarming the American citizens and fully realizing Cloward and Piven. That is, make no mistake about it, that is ultimately the legacy Barack Hussein Alu Akbar Obama, a.k.a. the Occupier, wants to leave. He will be the greatest hero in the minds of the so-called progressives ever. But he will effectively have destroyed the Republic and the individual liberties for which men and women have fought and bled for, so that you, the American voter now, can just let it slip away by letting people like Barack Obama or Hillary Clinton or Harry Reid or Nancy Pelosi or Dianne Feinstein or any other far leftist ideologue that's currently in office that you want to name, because there's plenty of them. As long as you keep voting for people like that and putting them in a position where they've got any kind of authority over you, we are all just giving up that liberty, that freedom, and the Republic itself. And all for this misguided notion that we need to somehow get along so things can get done, that we need to compromise. Well, when it comes down to something that's for the betterment of all people, I'm not above a good compromise. But when it comes to core principles, there can be no compromise that doesn't end up with the complete dissection of your soul. There can be no compromise on core principles that doesn't lead to you becoming part of the problem. Period. D.C. is a cesspool, and the only way to drain that swamp is to send all the snakes that are there now packing and send a whole new, fresh crew, mostly people who are dedicated to the concept of liberty and the concept of serving just 1 or 2 terms and getting out of Dodge. If you're looking at the Senate, 2 terms is probably too long. If you're looking at the White House, 2 terms is probably right at that level where you need to be. And if you're in the House, well, you know, those are 2-year terms there. So maybe you could spend 3 there and it not be so bad. But we definitely need term limits, and we definitely need to get on board with a convention of the states, which reminds me to, quick shameless plug, I've already mentioned that upcoming this Sunday, I have scheduled to speak with me a gentleman involving transgender issues by the name of Walt Heyer. The following Sunday, I have a gentleman who's representing the Alliance for Self-Government, and we'll be talking about the Convention of the States project. I'll plug that a little more when it gets closer to it, but the next 2 Sundays promises to be interesting at best. So please join me Sunday at BTR, starting at 3 p.m. Eastern, if you want to listen in live. And if not, you can always find the archives either there at BTR, or you also can find the podcast available at Stitcher, at TuneIn, at iTunes. The show is now listed at Blueberry as well, if you're interested, and still waiting to hear back if that's going to expand a little bit further or not. I think it'll be awesome, and I think it'll be an interesting conversation. For those of you who still have questions about a convention of the state, be a good time for you to tune in, but a convention of the state may very well be the only hope we have left at this point, the convention of states, to reel back in the central government, because there's not enough people that are there that are willing to limit their own authority. So, at any rate, Judge Garland, by all accounts, is a good guy. He's a decent guy. Would be the perfect guy to replace Justice Kennedy, who's also pretty much a centrist, despite we were promised that he was a die-in-the-wool conservative. He obviously is not. He's the man who gave us Obamacare twice, based on the concept that elections have consequences, and the federal government can levy taxes, even when it argues and demands and deems that they're not trying to institute a tax. What are you going to do? I know. Well, let's replace them. You know what? Well, you can. It's a lifetime appointment, but not only do they occasionally retire, you can impeach a Supreme Court justice. That process is in play. It's not likely to happen, but it's a process that's in play. So Barack does this. Barack gets to paint the Republicans as bad guys. Okay, we're recapping in case you missed it. He gets to paint the Republicans as bad guys. You're just obstructionists, and you're not letting me do my job. I get to pick. Well, yes, as the occupier of the White House who's supposed to be holding the titles of President of the United States and Commander-in-Chief, constitutionally speaking, it is one of your responsibilities to appoint justices to the Supreme Court. To appoint nominees. Nominees. You get to nominate them. You don't get to pick who it's going to be. You get to nominate. You get to submit for the approval of the Senate. And that's the key. Right now, the Republicans that control the Senate have no interest in letting Barack Obama's pick go. So they're, at least at this point, completely unwilling to even have hearings. So the Democratic Party gets to say, hey, there's the obstructionist Republicans once again standing in the way of progress in D.C., keeping us from being able to do our jobs, keeping us from being able to protect you from crazy gun runners and whatever other kind of criminals, Trump supporters at rallies, and whoever else they want to say is dangerous, because, you know, it really is average, everyday Americans who are the terrorists in the eyes of these leftists. That's not a newsflash anymore. If you've listened to any talk radio out there, you've heard that concept before. No matter what side of the political spectrum the type of talk show you listen to is from. Because the leftists will tell you, they're the crazies, they're the nuts, we've got to watch out for them. And the conservative talk show hosts are out there warning you, that's what they're telling you. And if you're paying any attention at all, you don't need us to tell you, because you would already have heard this. And you would know what they're saying and what they mean. These are dangerous times to be a veteran. Because not only is the VA trying to kill you, but the federal government's trying to automatically assume that you have a mental illness. All veterans have